Hello everyone, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Allison.
And this is Nerd of the Week, a randomly generated fandom podcast. Generator, would you like to remind the audience what we're supposed to be talking about on this episode?
The word of the week is stopwatch.
Alright. What? My goodness. Okay. What do you think stopwatch's definition is?
It's a watch that is used in situations where you must have specific timing. This is not going well. That can quickly be paused to show the result.
Okay. This one is a special watch with buttons that start, stop, and then zero the hands used to time races.
I could use a stopwatch for many other things than just races.
Right.
I think my definition was more exact and theirs was just more descriptive of the object,
right.
Which I guess is what a definition is. But oh no.
Oh, I want to know what the definition of definition is now.
Oh no. It's a wormhole.
It's a wormhole. A statement of exact meaning of word, especially in a dictionary. Well, I got this on Google, which is not a dictionary, so there.
We should maybe find a different source for our definitions.
Randomly Googling it, though, is quite fun.
It is, yes. And for the most part, I think I'm learning how they work, or how they're worded.
Yeah, you're getting them, like, fairly spot on or pretty close. And I enjoy the randomness. This one doesn't have it, but sometimes it'll give you, like, where the word came from or some obscure fact. This one doesn't actually give me how to use it in a sentence, which I'm very disappointed about.
Let's make up our own sentence real quick.
The guy used a stopwatch to time the swimming race.
Perfect.
Got it.
Beautiful.
Nailed it.
10 out of 10. Okay. Well, on that note.
All right. Well, speaking of using stopwatches in not a race form, I am bringing to the table Jurassic Park.
Oh, that's fun. I was wondering when that would come up.
Yeah, it was going to happen eventually.
I knew it would. Seems like your kind of movie.
I do. I love Jurassic Park. And
now, is this the first Jurassic Park? Or
yes.
The MIDI iterations afterwards?
This is the OG, based on the Michael Crichton, I think that's how you say his last name, novel. And I think all of them are technically based on the novel, but they like diverge more and more as you go on. Mm-hmm. But the first one follows it pretty well. I'm going to talk more about the movie than the novel because there is some divergence. There's more characters in the novel. Different people die in the novel as opposed to the book. And so spoiler alert, people die in this movie.
Oh no, honestly, I'm so sorry. Yet another movie that's classic that I've not seen.
You haven't seen Jurassic Park?
No.
Oh my goodness. I was just about to say
when I was wee baby, it would have been too scary for me, and then I've just never gotten around to it after that.
So this is calling out my mother. When this came out, it was 1993. I was literally a year old, and my mom wanted to see it so badly that I went to the theater with her.
Oh my goodness.
At a year old.
So it was your first movie?
It was I think my first movie, and probably why I've been addicted to like thriller and horror movies my whole life. Not that this is a horror movie, but at the time, there's one specific death scene. So this is just me calling out my mom now for excellent parenting. But at the time, there's a scene where the T-Rex eats a guy while he's hiding in the outhouse. Like he ran away from it and went and hid in the outhouse, and then he gets eaten. I bursted into hysterical laughter, apparently. I thought it was the funniest thing.
When you were a baby.
When I was a baby. And then so my mom knew I was going to be fine for the rest of the movie and not be scarred traumatically. I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah. So, I enjoyed this movie.
Okay. That's fair.
Anywho's it. So, like I said, I'm going to stick to the film, not the book. But the book is a good read, too. Do recommend. And I was actually surprised at how shot for shot it is for a lot of it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So main characters are John Hammond, who is a kind of like a capitalist businessman type character who has created a theme park known as Jurassic Park. And that is where he has a bunch of cloned dinosaurs. Do
you see the cloning process, or they just exist already?
They explain it. So how it cold opens to Dr. Grant and Dr. Sattler. So Ellie Sattler and Alan Grant are. I don't know if they're a couple. It goes back and forth. I think they were a couple. Unclear.
Okay. Doesn't matter.
But they work together, and they're on an archaeologic research dig where they're digging up, I think it's a velociraptor. And they are in the process of moving the dust away. They had a TV, like the latest technology in 1993, which was like this way to like sonar and see the image without having to dig it up. So they knew where everything was, so they could be more careful on their dig site. And so they're like looking at that, and he's explaining how T-Rex or how velociraptors have these like really sharp long claws and would like attack things with their hind ends and like tear them apart. And so just like having a conversation with, I think, one of the guys on his dig site, or there's two kids too, that I think Grant is their uncle. I could be wrong. I don't really know the relationship of everybody.
That's okay. It doesn't matter. It's fine.
The important thing is that there's going to be like 4 main characters, and 2 of them are Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler, and then the 2 kids who are along for the ride, who I think are Hammond's niece and nephew in the movie. But anyway, so Hammond comes down in a helicopter and basically like F's up the site because he's pushing dust around and he's disturbing the dig. So Grant is already ticked off at him, and he comes in to their like trailer that they're staying in, and he's trying to convince Alan that he needs his input on something that he's working on. He doesn't tell him, hey, I've cloned dinosaurs and I have like living, breathing dinosaurs, because like obviously no one would believe him. Mm-hmm. In the book, it's explained that Hammond funds Grant's research. I don't know if it's like really obviously highlighted in the movie, but basically he is the guy behind funding everything, because basically he was looking for a way to clone dinosaurs. So if he funds all these digs, he was going to find a way to do it. So he says, come with me onto this thing. I want to give you a tour of the thing.
And you'll be... Sorry. That's for a different time.
In a similar vein, though, because everything goes absolutely haywire. So, and it's a world of imagination.
I'm sorry, I did not mean to derail the podcast.
Oh, please always derail the podcast with Willy Wonka. So they go, he gets talked into it. So then they go, and they are met with basically a bunch of investors. So, and it's some vague tropical island. It actually, the filming was done on in the Hawaiian Islands. I think it was Kauai that a lot of the like action and establishing shots are from. But the fake island is Isla Nublar, I think. And so they land, and they're met with various investors. Gennaro, who's like a financial investor, and then Ian Malcolm, who is played by Jeff Goldblum. He's one of the like brainiacs / investors behind the project. And then you also meet Muldoon, who is kind of like an African safari hunter type guy, who you're kind of like, why are you specifically here? And so he goes and he's trying to like go through like, this is what we have. So once they're on the island, Hammond tells everyone like, yeah, I have like real dinosaurs. And they go through like this theme park ride, which is more of just like a sit down and like a screen goes by you and like shows you a bunch of stuff. And they have he's a DNA molecule cartoon character that's very, very classic for the show. He's kind of iconic for the movie.
Okay.
And so he's talking about they found dinosaur DNA encased in mosquitoes that got trapped in amber. So the idea behind it's not terrible. So the mosquito bit a dinosaur, got some of its blood, sat on a tree, and then amber, some form of like honey or sap from the tree encased the mosquito, and then preserved the DNA. And then from that, they cloned dinosaurs. And they don't mention it, or it's very briefly mentioned in passing, that what they do is they do some genome splicing. The Human Genome Project had just come out around this time. So I think that was like a hot topic of like genes and gene splicing. So they did some gene splicing with like frogs and other like amphibians and lizards and things that were supposedly close to dinosaurs, to like fill in the gaps between what they didn't have from the dinosaur DNA. So like they attempted some science on how they got there. So you see this in like a cartoon, and then the ride moves on a little bit, and there are some scientists who are in like an incubator room, and they're like moving eggs around. And at that point, Grant and Settler are both like, what? No, wait, is this real? So Grant Allen, I love him. He doesn't trust technology. He hates like anything cartoony. He like all this, like he's just a curmudgeon older guy. And so he more or less breaks the ride by like popping the like safety seat off. And like, so he with Settler, I think Ian Malcolm with him, and then another one, like push everything up and get themselves off. And then they escape the ride to go into the incubation room. And then they see the dinosaurs with I think it's specifically velociraptor babies, and Dr. Henry Wu, I think, is one of the doctors there, and he's like explaining the process. And then there's a little like there's a really cute hatching moment where like the egg comes up and he pops his head out, and there's this little baby velociraptor, and they're seeing this dinosaur. And then he asks, like, how is it possible if you're saying all of the dinosaurs here are male, or all the dinosaurs are female, so that they can't breed out on the park? And then it's like how they do their own gene splicing so they can control the population. Okay. And then he goes, what else do you have? And he goes, well, we've clocked the T-Rex at some speed, which one of the stopwatch words is they were clocking how fast the creatures were going.
Okay.
And then Alan looks at John Hammond and he goes, you have a T-Rex? He's like, we have a T-Rex. And so then Alan is like super on board with everything.
Just because of the T-Rex. Like that's what won him over.
That's what won him over, not the baby dinosaurs. I think
the babies are cute.
The babies are cute and less murderous than like real live velociraptors.
I don't want to look at some ugly giant lizard. I want to look at something cute.
I missed the initial scene that got them in there too. So when they land on the island, they're in the Jeeps, and he's talking, and that's when he's like, how do you claim that you have these things or whatever? And then Alan looks up, and there's a bunch of Brachiosaurus walking in a herd like through the park, and that's like the initial like they're here now. Mm-hmm. And so that, and then this like how we clone them, I'll show you how we clone them, is that's the combination of okay, this actually is really cool. So Malcolm, Grant, Settler, and the other investors are sitting and talking about like the ethics of cloning and the creation of this park, and like we're playing with life, and just because we should doesn't mean we can't, or just because we can doesn't mean we should, and there's a lot of like ethical questions in here, and Ian Malcolm is the one who kind of spews them out all the time of like, we never stopped to ask if this was a good idea. We just went for it and did it, playing God a little bit.
Yes.
And then he makes this broad stroke claim of like, eventually everything's going to break down. It's the life finds a way that I'm sure you've heard, where it's like, he's like, just because you made them all female doesn't mean that they're not gonna figure out how to breed. Like, there's a way to happen. It's gonna happen. This is not gonna end well. You put a bunch of dinosaurs on an island and expect them to do what you want. So
You're not gonna do what you want.
No.
They do what they want.
My dog only does what I want her to do half the time. Why do we think the
She's a
T-Rex
good girl.
Yeah. Why do we think that the T-Rex is going to listen to you? So after this scene, Hammond's grandchildren, Alexis or Lex and Tim, join the park, and they're like, why did you bring children here? And he's like, well, I needed, like, they're the target demographic. I need to know if they'll like it, not my investors and stuff. So he's put his kids at risk because no one else has gone through this park other than like people who know what's going on. And this is the first time like investors and the archaeologists are involved. So he's like, I'm gonna bring my grandkids on board because obviously nothing bad's gonna happen. And
obviously,
yeah. So they get put on 2 Jeeps and they go on a tour. But the tour does not go as planned because, like, you know, if you've ever been to a zoo and, like, half the exhibits don't have the animal up front, that's more or less what happens is, like, the T-Rex doesn't show up. They can't see the Stegosaurus. And then eventually they're finally able to see one thing, and it's a Triceratops, but she's sick. And so she's laying on her side and not doing well. And Settler...
That's sad.
They go rogue again, and they jump out of the Jeep, and Settler goes to go see the Triceratops, and one of the park rangers is there, and they start talking, and she notices that there's some berries in the poop, and she goes, do you think that it's poisonous? So he's like, ooh, maybe. And that's their park's veterinarian, Dr. Harding. And so she stays behind Dr. Settler, or Sattler. Maybe it's Sattler. I might be saying it wrong.
Whatever.
She stays behind to stay with Dr. Harding to study the Triceratops and like learn a little bit more because it's like the first actual dinosaur that they've seen out on this park. Then we do a scene change to there's Dennis Nedry, who is the lead computer programmer, and I don't remember exactly where the scene is, but he's not a good dude. He is played by Wayne Knight, and he works with Samuel L. Jackson's character, Ray Arnold, as, like, computer programmers to, like, run the security and run the, like, just the whole park and all the, like, the lights and all that stuff. And he got bribed by a man named Dr. Lewis Dodgson, who is as Hammond's corporate rival. And Dodgson had figured out what Hammond was doing, so he wanted to steal some of the dinosaur embryos so that they could open up their own rival dinosaur park.
No.
So Nedry gets offered like a bunch of money to steal like one of every embryo. And so part of the plan for him is that he's going to turn off all the lights and deactivate the park security system.
Oh, no.
And it's only supposed to go on for like a minute. Like it's all supposed to turn off and then turn back on. But that would give him enough time to slip in, get the embryo, slip out. And then he's supposed to go to the dock and then exchange the embryos and then come back and say, oh yeah, it was just a weird security glitch, so sorry. And then no one was supposed to be the wiser. But of course the sabotage happens and it doesn't go exactly as planned. So the other stopwatch scene is that he sets a timer, and then he sets on his watch as a stopwatch, and it's how long the power is supposed to be out. So when he clicks that, everything goes off. And so Alan and Malcolm and the kids are in the tour vehicles, and the tour vehicles are on tracks. They're not actually being driven, and so that cuts the power for them. So they're stranded right next to the Tyrannosaurus Rex paddock, and all the
This just gets worse and worse.
Yeah, it's not good. And it's a really good build of suspense, right? So the park's electric fences have been deactivated. And of course, it's starting to rain and it's getting dark. And they're like, hey, are we going to come back? They're trying to call for help. They can't hear anything. Like, they're not connecting with anyone. Muldoon and the other security back at the main station are trying to get a hold of them. They can't. They realize something's going wrong. Arnold, the other computer programmer, starts to realize that, initially Nedry sets it up like, hey, there's going to be a couple of glitches going through because, so you might notice some power flickers because there's a new update going through. So he bought himself some time lying that way. But Arnold realizes pretty quickly that that's not true. And so he's trying to get into the Nedry's computer, but Nedry has locked it down. And then they have to do like the classic like 90s computer hacking. That's just like a green screen, like moving around a bunch, and you're what is happening? But sci-fi computer hacking. And then we go back to the crew with the Jeeps, and they're, getting frustrated. They're hanging out in the Jeeps. The kids find night vision goggles in one of the Jeeps, and so they're like looking around with it, and Ian Malcolm looks, and there's a cup, and the rings, there's like the cup starts to shake a little bit, and like with like the beats of like heavy footfalls. And they look up, and they had used like a goat to lure the T-Rex to the wall, but it hadn't worked before. But then they realized the goat is missing, and the T-Rex bursts through the electric fence, realizing that it's not on anymore, and the T-Rex escapes, and then it attacks the group. The T-Rex goes after the Jeep first with the kids in it. So Grant and Malcolm try to like wave it over and like distract it with lights. And Gennaro, one of the investors, this is a scene where he runs and goes and hides in the outhouse nearby, and then he gets eaten.
Oh no.
But while he's getting eaten, it gives Grant, Lex, and Tim time to escape, and so they're able to like basically hijack the Jeep and like drive away. Meanwhile, we switch over to Nedry, who got lost because when you turn off all the power and it's dark and there's a mild monsoon happening on your island, it's very difficult to drive. And so he crashes his car that he stole, and he gets harassed by this really cute dinosaur called the Dilophosaurus. And it's that one that has like the frills that come out of its neck, and it actually spits venom. So he's like,
oh, so not so cute.
I think he's adorable, but he does harass and eventually kill Nedry. But there's like a back and forth with him being like, get away, dinosaur, screw you. Go away, you're a cute little thing, go fetch. And he like throws like a sandwich or something to try to get it to go away, and then like he turns around and it's in the car with him, and then it jumps him. So Nedry's whole plan fails, and then the embryos are left in the Jeep, and no one really knows what happens to Nedry. We jump then to Sattler and Muldoon, who were also trying to figure out what's going on, and they go back towards where the Jeeps had been, and they find Malcolm, who had gotten left behind because the Tyrannosaurus had chased Grant and the kids a different way. And so they go and continue to search for everyone. They bring Malcolm back to the welcome center of the park, and the Tyrannosaurus comes and turns and like comes back to where that area and like chases them back. And so Malcolm's like in the back of the Jeep watching the T-Rex chase after him, and he's like, we should go faster, please.
Oh, no.
Then they get away, and Grant, Tim, and Lex take shelter. They climb up a tree because they're hoping that the T-Rex won't get up into a tree, and they see
Good thought.
the Brachiosaurus herd, that they had seen at the beginning of the movie. And there's a cute scene where Grant is feeding the dinosaur with some leaves, and then he gives it to the kids, and then like the dinosaur like sneezes on the kids, and it's a cute moment. And Grant is kind of taking the place of like the protector father figure role for these kids. Like, I'm going to make sure these kids survive. They also discover some broken shells of like eggs, of dinosaur eggs. And they realize, it's probably because Malcolm was right and the dinosaurs have been breeding. And it's because they had combined in West African frogs, I think is the one that they pulled from, who can change their sex dependent on how many males or females are in a colony. And so they didn't do their research on which ones they were gene splicing. So the dinosaurs can change their sex now, apparently, and breed out in the wild.
Great.
So super great. Totally not going to be a bad time for everyone. We go back to Hammond and Arnold, who are messing around with Nedry's like computer, and it's not working. And they make the decision that they have to go like hard reboot the system, so turn everything on and off again. And so Arnold goes into the emergency bunker where all of the like maintenance things are to like reboot. And Arnold doesn't come back for a long time. Like, he was only supposed to be gone for half an hour, and Muldoon and Sattler realize something's wrong, and they discover that the Velociraptor fence is down and has been busted through.
Oh no.
And these aren't like what so this is the movie that like made people think that velociraptors were like small horse sized. Velociraptors are actually much smaller, but you know, we weren't 100% sure at this time. So velociraptors in this movie are much larger, and they're very clever, and they hunt in a group of like 3 or 4. I think there's 4 of them total, and they hunt together. And so Muldoon realizes that they're coming after them and they are being the target of this hunt. So he gets Sattler and sends her away. And he tries to hunt down one, and he sees one like acting injured. And so he's walking up towards it with his gun, and he turns, and then there's a velociraptor right by his face. And that's where the line "clever girl" comes from, because he realized he just got. So unfortunately, we lose Muldoon.
Wait, so clever girl is talking about the dinosaur?
Yeah, it's talking about the dinosaur and how smart they are.
All this time I thought it was about like the little girl who's in the movie.
No, it's about the dinos.
Oh my gosh, okay.
It's much better, right? Because it's about the dinosaurs.
Yes. It's kind of cute.
And so the dinosaur, they get Muldoon. And Muldoon was one of my favorite characters because he's just like the rough and gruff, like ranger, or like the park ranger guy. And I'm sad he died. So Sattler gets to where Arnold was and discovers that he got by the velociraptor as well. And so she, because she discovers like part of him and not him alive.
Not alive.
Not alive, just an arm. I think it's an arm. I think she's like going, and then she feels an arm on her, and then she's like, oh, thank God you're alive. And then the arm just comes with her, and she's like, oh crap.
Not so alive anymore.
Not so alive. So Sattler then does what he didn't and turns the power back on, and discovers that before Arnold had gotten eaten, he had locked a velociraptor in the room with him and like had tried to like keep it from getting out. But when she turned the power back on, the velociraptor gets out. And so she has to escape from that velociraptor. We go back to Grant, Tim, and Lex, so Grant and the kids. They've gotten back to the visitor center, and Grant tells the kids to stay inside the visitor center and like don't open any doors and stuff, and they'll be fine. Well, he goes and looks for Sattler. At this point, they've gotten radios to work, so they're able to like figure out where each other is. And so he's like, I'm gonna go get her. You guys stay here. So Tim and Lex hang out for a minute, but then the velociraptors that had hunted Muldoon which was right near where they had been, enter the visitor center. And then there's this very tense scene of them in the kitchen with the velociraptor. They had closed the door on the velociraptor, and the velociraptor figures out how to open the door. And then the two come in through the door, and the kids are trying to like sneak around and like hide in the kitchen. And it's very tense and very well done. And it's very spooky with them like being hunted by the raptors. They are able to lock one in the freezer, and by like making a distraction, and like the velociraptor runs in and then they close it, but then the other one chases after them. So I think they end up going up into the ceiling, and they're hiding up in the ceiling. And in a little bit of a Deus Ex, Grant and Sattler come back and they see them, and then so they get them up and they pull them away. And they are cornered after they've managed to... I think Lex is chalked up to be a computer hacker because every 13-year-old was considered a computer hacker in 90s movies. And so she's the one who overrides Nedry's system finally and like turns on all the electric fences and like all the power back on and things like that. So they're able to get themselves in a little bit more of a safe location. But, all the dinosaurs have escaped, so they're not behind the electric fences anymore. But they are able to call Hammond, who has been in basically a panic room this whole time, being very useless. But
I was just going to say, not very helpful.
Not very helpful, man. But he's able to call the Coast Guard and call for help and do the panic, because they've had panic button situations. So they're finally able to get a panic distress call out. And then right at the end, the velociraptors come after the Sattler, Grant, and the kids as they're running through the visitor center to get out. But the Tyrannosaurus Rex comes in and she goes after it. And then there's a Welcome to Jurassic Park. There's a banner that comes down, and she does her scream out into the it's the trailer for the movie kind of situation. But it's a very iconic scene of her screaming very wildly, and they do it in every movie. Because they're like, look how cool this is. We've got a T-Rex. And then they're able to get in with Hammond, who is, I think, also that's where they had dropped Malcolm. He had been dropped off there after Sattler and Muldoon went to go look for where Arnold ended up. So Hammond arrives with Malcolm, and then they get onto the helicopter, and then the last shot is them flying away from the island, and that's the end of Jurassic Park.
Oh my goodness. Is it a happy ending?
I mean, people lived.
It seems like it leaves a lot of things unanswered.
Yeah, so it's
probably on purpose.
Right. It's a cliffhanger, and there's multiple movies. So in the next couple of movies, the government gets involved because they want to train the T-Rex for military purposes. It's stupid things.
They should know you can't train a T-Rex. Its brain is too tiny.
Right. Yeah. Well, the government...
It was going to be a failure from the beginning.
The government doesn't know that. So
these movies sound frustrating, if anything.
They are a little bit in the military capitalistic greed corporate nonsense, but they're very fun to watch, and I love them because they're dinosaurs.
Fair enough. Okay.
I love the movies. They're great.
Okay. Well, I won't rain on your parade. I promise I'll watch it at some point eventually.
Don't worry. I'll make you. It'll be fun. Random trivia. The T-Rex, they named her Roberta. That's my favorite.
In the movie, or just the cast and crew on set? The cast and crew
had named her Roberta. Okay. So that was just her name on screen. People call her Rexy, but the cast and crew called her Roberta.
That's cute. Awesome. Do you want a quote now?
I would love a quote now.
Okay. It's real dumb. I'm not happy with it, but I was having a hard time. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Memories of a life I leave behind. Take a souvenir to remind me of the ones that I love. Feel my heart. It beats like a stopwatch. running out of time with each tick-tock. It's never or now.
Sounds like a song.
It is a song.
Okay. I will think about it.
It's a dumb song.
All right. I don't know.
Again, I'm not pleased. I shouldn't say it's a dumb song. It's not actually a song that I personally know. I just Googled lyrics with Stopwatch. I was struggling so hard to find anything where people actually said stopwatch.
I mean, we both agree that it can be the vibe too. It doesn't have to say the exact word.
Well, I didn't want to make it such a stretch because I always make it such a stretch.
Oh, it's okay.
So anyway, you may or may not get it. Honestly, I wouldn't have gotten it either. So whatever.
Well, if you know, listener, feel free to let us know what song it is on any of our social media. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Tumblr now.
That's a lot.
We have a lot. I think I've hit all the important ones.
Interact with us.
Yeah, at Nerd of the Week or Nerd of the Week Pod. Hashtag NOTWP or hashtag Nerd of the Week. We'd love to hear from you.
Please. Please. All right. Well, how about if I tell you about my thing?
I would love to hear about your thing.
So the thing that I'm bringing, it's an anime called Tower of God, which started its life as a webtoon, but I don't know about that. I only know about the anime. So that's what we're talking about.
Tower of God?
Tower of God, yes.
Okay.
I'm sure you'd seen advertisements for it at least.
I think I've seen like TikToks of people like splicing it into like kind of like old school dating myself YouTube AMVs, but
okay.
I think so, because I remember seeing it and I'm like, I don't think I've heard of this, because I was like, I don't recognize this, but okay, I'm ready for it.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm not entirely sure what the TikToks are, because I've not seen anything like that.
All right, deal.
But anyway, so it's an anime. It came out in, gosh, it'd be great if I knew anything about anything.
If that's not a whole mood,
I think it was sometime in 2020.
Okay.
It must have been. Yes, because it was definitely something that I experienced during quarantine. So it came out during 2020.
Okay.
It was, as I said, originally based on the webtoon, which is basically like a manga online. And they tried to like make the animation similar to that art style.
Okay.
So I think it looks really, really cool how they've done it. It's like really, really pretty. It's a little more, I guess, kind of like sketchy looking than some animes are. And the colors are incredibly vibrant, and it just overall looks really, really pretty. And I really, really like it with it's aesthetic.
It's aesthetic. It's a vibe. I gotcha.
Aesthetic. Also, its music is the best. I love it so much. Its soundtrack is like so awesome to like go running to.
Oh, really?
It's so powerful.
I love that.
Yeah, it's amazing. So it opens with like storytelling kind of opening, essentially, where there's like a voiceover, and it's like, once there was a girl named Rachel. Actually, let me find you exactly what it says for the summary. And this is it's very similar to what they say in the opening of the movie, but the summary is, reach the top and everything will be yours. At the top of the tower exists everything in this world, and all of it can be yours. Very repetitive. Mm-hmm. You can become a god. This is the story of the beginning and the end of Rachel, the girl who climbed the tower so she could see the stars, and Bam, the boy who needed nothing but her.
Oh.
Yeah. And then like they keep saying like, what will you do to climb the tower throughout the whole series. So basically, the whole first season is the trials that these people have to go through to say that they are ready and prepared and able to climb up the Tower of God to reach the top.
Okay.
And legend has it, once you reach the top of the tower, then you can have whatever wish granted to you or something like that. And there's a king of the tower who is like the first person to have climbed the tower or something like that, and he rules over everything. And then there's people called the regulators, I believe.
Okay.
Or no, the administrators. And they administer the testing to all of the contestants, but they are people who have also climbed up the tower before. And then there's the people who are competing, basically, and they're known as regulars, in quote, like just regular people.
Okay.
And basically the tower kind of like chooses them from amongst the population of like, these people seem to have a desire to do this, and so we're going to give them the opportunity. And so they're like somehow called to the tower. And then there's Bam and Rachel. So Rachel kind of forces her way into the games.
Okay.
And like, we're not sure exactly how she gets into the games, but we also get like snippets of a backstory from her and Bam. So somehow Bam was stuck in this cave and like he couldn't see any sky or anything like that. And he didn't remember anything but his name. Mm-hmm. We're not sure exactly what happened to him to get him to that point, but he can't remember anything before he met Rachel.
Okay.
So Rachel somehow also ended up in the cave, and she like taught him basically everything he knows. And she would always say things like, you have to be kind to people because that's what matters most. And like just all these like really sweet things. And like, you thought like, oh my God, she really cares about this little guy. And like, he loves her, of course, because he doesn't know anything else.
Right.
But Rachel, like kind of in the background of all this, she's always like drawing paintings on the cave and showing him like, this is the tower. And look, these things up here, these are the stars. And one day I'm going to climb the tower because I want to see the stars. Like that's her whole deal.
Okay.
She
That's her
wants
motivation.
to get out of this place, essentially.
Fair. Can't blame her.
Yeah. So one day she somehow breaks out of the cave and she runs somehow into the doors of the tower and is, I guess, consumed into its games, essentially. And Bam is trying to run after her, and he is magicked into this like kind of little waiting room kind of area. Mm-hmm. It's just another part of the cave.
Okay.
There he meets the guardian of the tower. And Bam, he says, like, I just want to be with Rachel. Like, I don't want to climb the tower. I just want to be with her. So, like, already he's kind of putting himself out as, like, I'm not like the other people. He doesn't
I'm not
mean
like
to.
the other boys.
He's not a pick-me boy. He really isn't. It just, he doesn't know anything else. He, like...
All right,
Rachel
I can forgive
was
him
his
that.
whole world, and she literally abandoned him after she had been so kind to him for so long.
Oh.
And
He's
so
just
the Guardians
trying to find his one friend.
Yeah, exactly. Really, it was his whole world.
Okay.
So the Guardian of the Tower says, "Well, I can let you into the games to see if you're worthy to climb the tower and find her if you pass my first test." And the first test is he has to defeat this like evil snake thing that's part of the Guardian's whole guard to the front of the tower. While he is like fighting with just talking with the Guardian, he meets a princess whose name is Yuri.
Okay.
She's a princess of Jihad. Jihad is the king of the tower. So basically she is part of the tower's royal family. And somehow she takes a liking to Bam.
Okay.
And she allows Bam to use one of her special swords. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, this is a lot of lore right up front. There's these 13 swords named for different months.
Okay.
And so she gives a sword to Bam called the Black March that basically she has never really gotten along with this sentient sword.
Okay.
But the sword takes a liking to Bam and allows itself to be used by him, and they defeat this snake monster. Basically...
Is he a nice sentient sword?
Yeah.
No. Okay. With the name like Black March, I wonder.
No, it's just the color. I don't think it has anything to do with
like personality. Okay, got it.
Yeah, because there's another one called the Green April. Like, they're just colors, I think.
Got it. Okay.
More on the Green April later. But I think the sword is actually like really, it is nice, and it kind of, it's not like Rachel in the same way that it empowers Bam, but it like says, like, come on, you're stronger than this. You have what it takes. You've got this kind of thing. Like, really hypes him up. And in a miraculous turn of events, instead of like trying to fight this steel dragon snake thing, Bam lets himself be eaten and then stabs his way out from the inside with the
Classic.
sword. Exactly. And so the Guardian's like, oh, you've passed my test. You definitely get to go into the next set of testing. So that's how Bam gets to be in, I'm just going to call them like the games or the testing to get into the climbing of the tower. So immediately he's transported into this huge like field of grass. It's like this huge barren land. There's like a few little plateaus of rocks here and there. Mm-hmm. And then he realizes there's like hundreds of other contestants around him as well. And there's this noise over the loudspeaker that says, starting now, we will start counting down. And you have to basically kill as many other people as you can. And so, like, Bam, he's this tiny little boy with this sword he doesn't really know how to use. And he's just trying to, like, run away, basically, from these people. He doesn't really understand what to do.
Yeah.
Here's when we kind of start meeting a bunch of different characters.
Okay.
There are too many characters, I might say, in this.
Got it.
But they all have very incredibly different character designs. Like, one critique that I've seen of this show is that, like, none of the characters look like they're in the same show, which is totally valid, but also really helps so that you can tell them all apart.
That does help.
And there's this one big giant guy. He has, like, eyes all around the top of his head, so it looks like he can see everywhere, but he's just kind of, like, standing there, and he looks a little squishy. And Bam, like, kind of sneaks up behind him and, like, his hands are shaking while he's holding the sword. And he's, like, about to stab this poor guy who's just standing there. When he's, like, suddenly kind of knocked back, not with a killing blow, but just with, like, a, hey, get back kind of thing, by this other young fellow whose name is Kun. And he's like, don't worry, this guy's not going to hurt a fly. And Bam's like, oh, my gosh, thank you so much for not letting me kill him then. And Kun sees the Black March, recognizes that it's one of these princesses' swords, and he's like, okay, in his head, he's like, I gotta stick with this guy because I'm just too curious about how he got this. So he kind of grabs Bam by the hand and is like, come on, we're gonna be a team now, come with me. And Bam's just like, oh, okay, fine. Also to kind of describe some of the characteristics of what these kids look like. So Bam, he looks just like this brown-haired little peasant boy kind of thing. Kun, he looks kind of fancy. He has blue hair. He's wearing a white button-down shirt, and he carries a briefcase, which is his weapon. Which
I love that
as well.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really funny. We'll definitely get into that more.
Okay.
Then suddenly over the loudspeaker, it says, all right, you now have 3 minutes to find a team. And at the end of the 3 minutes, you have to be touching your team members. And anyone who doesn't have a team member will be excluded from the rest of the testing. So this is kind of where Stopwatch comes in, where like, there's definitely timing within all of these games.
Got it. Okay.
So Kun and Bam, they have this great plan. They are already like holding hands, sticking together. So they're good. Then Kun has found someone else they want to be on the team, whose name is Rak. And he is a giant dinosaur-looking person. Okay. So another dinosaur reference for this episode.
Love it.
There's our sub-theme, I guess.
Stopwatch equals dinosaur. Love it.
So Rak's big thing is he's a hunter, and he loves to hunt everything. But he's really, like, kind of a gentle person, if that's possible.
I gotcha.
He also, from whatever world he comes from, there's people like him, and then there's turtles. So he calls anybody else turtles.
All right, fair enough.
Bam ends up being the brown turtle, and Kun ends up being the blue turtle. And basically they, like, taunt him and, like, run back and forth, and he can't quite catch them. And Kun is, like, kind of a smooth talker and, like, kind of just making Rak confused because Rak doesn't have very many brains. And then right at the very end, he has Bam throw Rak's cape over his head from the back so he's blinded. And then they grab onto his legs, and then the timer stops, and it's like, congratulations, you're a team now. Because Rak's whole thing is like, I want to hunt you, I want to kill you. But then they end up being a team. which is fun.
Because they're touching at the end of the... Got it.
Exactly, yes, yep. So they're a team of 3. And then other people have made it through as well, this first trial. And so now they're in like another waiting room waiting for the next test to be administered.
Okay.
I'm going to kind of skip around a few things because I don't want to go through every single little trial that we have. But I guess kind of the next big one where the next big story plot comes in. So Kuhn is kind of asking Bam, like, what brings you here? And Bam's like, well, I'm trying to find Rachel. She wants to see the stars, but I just want to be with her. And Kuhn's like, you shouldn't let yourself be like dragged around by someone who doesn't respect you. And Bam doesn't quite understand that at the time.
Yeah.
But from Kuhn's backstory, we realize that he's kind of gotten to the place he is today, which is kind of like not so great, I guess. Like the people who are going through these trials, apparently like they've all had they're down on their luck kind of thing, essentially. So Kuhn apparently was part of one of the important families in the tower, and he was going to, I think, marry somebody from another important family, but she did something very egregious and basically left him. But because of that, she actually got to become one of the princesses. So the princesses are not actually related to the king to begin with. They're just like selected from these other families. But I think they all have to kind of do something egregious towards their families to be considered for the role of princess, which just seems real nasty to begin with.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. So more on him later, though. The next test is starting. The administrator who will be like their kind of guide throughout the rest of the testing, his name is Lero Rowe, and he is a good boy.
Okay.
And like he's definitely on Bam's side.
Got it. Okay.
Even though he's part of like the bureaucracy of the tower, he's definitely on Bam's side.
Gotcha.
So there's this like force throughout the tower called Shinsu, which is basically how all of these powerful people who climb the tower like have their powers. And apparently as you go up and up in the tower, the Shinsu force gets more and more strong, and you have to be able to withstand it or else it will kill you. So he says only people who can stand like a low level of Shinsu even have a chance of going through. So I'm gonna like put up this wall, and he like moves his hand, and like suddenly there's this wall of the Shinsu power. It looks like just this waterfall essentially, but it's like energy essentially. He's like, whoever can make it through gets to go on to the next test. So everyone like runs up to the wall, but Kuhn has his team kind of stay back, and he's like, no, let's watch a little bit and see what happens. And so there are some people who are like trying to get through, just forcing their way, and it doesn't really work for them. And then there's others who like just kind of like make it through. And at this point, I feel like it's kind of hard to like differentiate like who's going to make it through and who's not. Okay. And there's a few other characters who will become important in the story later at this point who do make it through. So it's basically like we're kind of getting rid of some of the characters who are not as important anymore. However, Kuhn and Rack, they're the ones who were still hanging back. Bam, actually, when the shield had been put up, it had been kind of like put up in a way that was going to repel everybody backwards, but he didn't get repelled backwards. He just got stuck on the side of it that they were trying to get to already. Like it had no effect on him. And so he's real innocent. And he says to Lero Rowe, he's like, hey, I'm still on this side. Do you want me to like go back and try again? And Lero Rowe like squints his eyes at him like, no, you're here already. It's fine. Just come sit with me. And so Bam's like, okay. And that's when Kuhn and Rack are like, okay, let's hang back and figure out how people are getting through. Okay. Spoiler alert, they get through. However, as Kuhn is pulling his briefcase through, it like kind of gets stuck on its own in the Shinsu. And he like has to really force it out, but he still comes through. So we're still concerned about what's in this briefcase. Okay. Anyway, then Lero and Bam, they'd been kind of having a little bit of like a side conversation throughout all this. And this is when Bam kind of learns of something called irregulars, which they are people who are not supposed to be in the tower. Like, whenever they're there, something bad happens to the tower and the whole like bureaucracy of the tower, and it's not good to be an irregular. And I think at this point, Lero Ro has suspicions that Bam might be an irregular. Spoiler alert, he is an irregular. Someone somehow told him this in his mind.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. So he is an irregular, and we think Rachel's also an irregular.
Got it. Okay.
But basically, they were not supposed to be there. They just found themselves there. But I would argue, like, Bam had to talk to the guardian of the tower first. Mm-hmm. And no one else did. So maybe he's actually the most worthy person to be in the tower. But whatever. That's just what I think.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so anyway, everyone gets through the Shinsu. There's a few other little tests, and then eventually they're like, once they've made it through these few initial testings, they get to kind of like hang out in this almost like a school-like kind of setting. So they all have like their little dorms, and there's a cafeteria, and this is where everyone kind of like gets to be friends, and we meet a few more people.
Okay.
So there's another character whose name is Hots, and he's like a kung fu master. There's another, she's like a little lizard girl, and she is Anak, and she has the green April, and she's been parading around as another princess of Jihad, which everyone's like, why is a princess here in these tests? But she's just kind of like rushing it off, like, I'm supposed to be here, don't question me. And she's real tough and feisty, and you shouldn't mess with her because she knows what she's doing.
Don't worry about it. Don't question it. Not important.
Yes. And then we also meet another princess of Jihad who is Endorsi. So far we've met 3 princesses or supposed princesses of Jihad. Okay. Everyone but Yuri is trying to climb the tower. I think Yuri already has her life figured out. She might have already climbed the tower at some point, so she's not in the games. She's just kind of in the background with interest that Bam somehow makes it through so she can have her sword back. During this next, like, kind of school section, they are split up into different sections of study of, like, what are they best at? How are they best going to support the team? And so Rock, of course, he gets to be the hunter, and he doesn't actually have to go to school because he passed the initial examinations 100%, which is basically like he was able to shoot an arrow 100% at a bullseye 3 miles in the distance, or something crazy like that.
That's wild.
Like he's just a good boy. He did all his things right, and so he gets to chill for the rest of this arc.
Fair enough.
And then Kun gets to be the light bearer. So light bearers, they basically are like the organizers and planners of everything. And that's perfect for Kun because he's smart, and he has like Kun acts more like an irregular than Bam does, because his whole thing is like, I'm going to bring down the tower. Like, that's why he wants to climb it, is because he wants to tear it down, basically. Bam gets to be a wave controller. Where he basically has to master the power of Shinsu so that he can control it and fight things with it. So that's what his tasks will be. Some other of the positions are fishermen, spear bearers, and scouts. So just other people who are in their crew basically have been assigned to these different things. Okay. I think it was Rock became a spear bearer is what it's actually called, not a hunter. In this part, we have like Endorsi and Anak, the 2 princesses of Jihad. They have to fight each other because they are both going to be also some sort of fighter. Their test that they have to go through is very brutal because it's fought up on these really high towers, like these discs that are set up on these high towers. And they say something like, well, what if we fall off of here? And the administrator says, your injuries are your own problem. And if you survive, then you have to be able to recover and move on to the next test. But you might die. Like, just deadpan. You might die. It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's a very brutal test, apparently. So Anak and and Dorsey, they're also having like a verbal word fight this whole time as well. But basically it's revealed simultaneously while they're having this conversation, and then also while Kun is doing research, that Anak is not a princess, but her mother was a princess of Jihad. So basically, princesses of Jihad are not supposed to have families. They're just supposed to like stay single and do the tower's bidding, essentially. But she fell in love with a baker and ran away.
Oh.
So she's like a princess on the loose. Through some terrible turn of events, and I think somehow of the tower's doing, she was burned to death in a fire, leaving poor little Anak on her own. And so Anak now has to take vengeance on the tower, which is why she's there. And this is also how she got the green April, is from her mother, basically. So she's kind of trying to like get revenge, but Dorsey like actually has kind of taken a liking to her, and she's like, I want to climb the tower with you. I don't want to fight you. But she also kind of still hates her because Dorsey's like so self-centered. And they end up both falling off of the towers together, but they have broken bones, but they survive.
Okay.
And they're able to get healed up, essentially. All during this time as well, the scouts, they've been having to make a list of friends. Like, that was their whole thing. They have to have a list of like 6 friends or something like that. And so they've definitely like gotten Kun and Bam and Rock and, you know, all the important people. And then they just need to convince Dorsey and Anak to be on their friend list as well. But like, they're so like, no, I'm going to do this on my own, that it really takes some convincing to win over Dorsey. They bring her food and they tell her like, you're the most beautiful princess ever, and we would just love to be your friend.
Oh my goodness.
And she realizes it's flattery, but she also like agrees to put her name on the list.
Okay.
So that's great. And then when they go to Anak, they're like, well, Dorsey did it, and she's like, fine, I'll do it too.
Well, if he did it, then I'll do it.
Yes. So now they have their list of friends, and everybody passes. But turns out the list of friends is a secret list for who's going to pass the test. So somehow it's kind of like predetermined who's actually going through here. And Kun has figured it out. He's figured out the whole thing.
Oh.
But like the most important thing is Bam has to survive. So the next test that they're actually having to pass, it's called Tag, which, as it would seem, is just like Tag, except it's more deadly. So they've gotten this really brutal administrator to come down, and like he's going to be the taggee, essentially. It's basically more like capture the flag rather than tag, I guess, where he has a little flag that they're supposed to take. So there's 2 rounds, 2 teams. Unfortunately, Bam and Kun are not on the same team, and everybody's like, no, it's not right. It's not how it's supposed to be. But Rachel and Bam are on the same team. Okay. Now, all this time, Rachel's been acting real shady. She isn't using her real name, and she's hiding under a cloak. So everyone's like, is she Rachel? Is she not Rachel? We're not sure. Kun has figured it out. Kun knows it's really her. But Bam is still kind of like, I don't know. She's not acting like real Rachel would. But as we already know, Rachel already abandoned Bam. So real Rachel's...
Yeah. Not great.
A jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's totally acting how real Rachel would. Kun had a private conversation with her that was basically like, hey, if you hurt my boy, we're going to hurt you.
My boy.
My boy. Oh, I forgot to tell you a little bit more about Kun's briefcase.
Okay.
So it's basically some sort of magic pouch that can replicate things. And so whatever he puts in it, he can replicate and or just kind of transport. It's almost like a bag of holding.
Okay.
With some extra magic powers.
Sure.
So at one point, he actually was able to bring in extra friends. And that's why it kind of got stuck when he was pulling it through the Shinsu, is because he was carrying other people with him in the bag. But he used that for an earlier test that basically they were able to defeat Anak. And I'm sorry, I kind of skipped this part. Bam had another instance with his sword where he was able to use the sword, and like he had this incredible Shinsu power and everyone's like, oh my gosh, he's super powerful.
Okay.
And then this is how we got to the school scene. I'm sorry, I skipped over all that completely. It's not totally important.
I understand.
So anyway, during tag, they're on the different teams, but Kun has this master plan that, like, as long as everyone does the right thing, it's all gonna be okay.
Okay.
However, there's this one guy who didn't really do the right thing, and he almost messed it up for everybody.
Oh, no.
So let me find his name for us real quick. He has also this really sad backstory where, like, his tribe of creatures, I don't know exactly what kind of creature he is. He has one horn, and that's all.
Okay.
But basically, his tribe of creatures was all slaughtered, and he was the only surviving person, and so he has to survive to get revenge on people. Mm-hmm. Oh, his name is Ho. H-O-U.
Okay.
Ho. So anyway, he thinks he needs to, like, win and survive. He thinks he has the most compelling story. He thinks he's the main character. He is not. But anyway, he's going into league with Rachel, basically, to kill Bam, to eliminate Bam, because they don't understand the game as much as Kun does. So they think it's just one team versus the other.
Got it.
Rather than who's on the friend list versus who's not on the friend list.
Got it.
And so he and Rachel are in a secret pact, but as it turns out, he's going to just turn on Rachel and basically kill both her and Bam during this race.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. However, he gets killed instead.
Oh, okay.
Like, that wasn't at all planned, and somehow Bam and Rachel, like, see each other, and as he's trying to stab Rachel, as he's getting stabbed, he does actually stab Rachel in the back.
Oof.
And damages her spine.
Oof.
And so Bam and Rachel, like, well, Rachel's like, Bam, leave me alone. I don't care about you. Let me figure this out on my own. Bam's like, no, I can't leave you, and you're injured, and I just care so much about you, and I'm gonna help you climb the tower no matter what. Luckily, Kun's plan still works out because Endorsi is smart and knows what she's doing, and she was the person who was supposed to be actually grabbing the flag while everyone else was distracting. Mm-hmm. So she manages to get the flag, and their team is fine, except that Rachel is paralyzed now.
Yeah, for real.
And Bam is like, I can't climb the tower if she can't climb the tower. And the administrator, like, he's on Bam's side this whole time. He's like, well, you know what, Bam? We could do a special test to see if maybe y'all can come along too, even though Rachel is terribly injured. So they have to first apply for the special test, which means that Bam has to, like, meet with the supreme being of the tower, which is someone we've not met with yet. Mm-hmm. But basically it's someone who has to approve his use of the Shinsu, essentially. So he goes and meets with this being, and you get the feeling that it's kind of like this person has been watching him all along and doesn't have his best interest in mind and actually wants him to get killed. But he approves the secret special test. So everybody's happy. They all get to do the secret special test, which is Rachel, paralyzed Rachel, and Bam are going to be stuck in a water bubble under the ocean. There are these little seals that also live in the ocean, and they go and hunt for fish. Okay. They give the fish to their supreme seal leader, who's like this weird anemone. And basically the anemone, like, feeds on the fish and then squirts water out the top of itself. So the goal is that somehow while they're feeding this thing, we'll push Bam and Rachel's bubble into it, and then they will be blown off the surface and everyone will be fine. Mm-hmm. However, there's these, like, orc lizard kind of creatures as well that hunt the seals. And so if the seals are hunted, then Bam and Rachel will not be pushed in the right direction, and then they'll die underwater. Oh. And so everybody has to, like, come up with this plan with, like, we have to help the seals hunt, but we also have to prevent them from getting eaten. But then there's also super secret plans that were not part of the game. Oh, good. So it's from kind of an internal bureaucracy, of course, thing. So there's this creature called the Bull that has, quote, accidentally been unleashed on the battleground. And so all the fighters have to like try and fight off the bull, and Anak and Endorsi are like the ones who are put up against it. And it's like they are capable fighters. They have been literally killing it with their fighting skills up till now. But the bull is awful, and he really takes them for running their money. The bull himself, I don't know how he got the name the bull, because he looks like a swamp monster with one eye and horrible teeth.
Oh.
And I think he can also use his tail as like a tentacle kind of thing that grabs people and pins them against the wall.
Don't like that.
Yeah, so he's awful, and he does nearly kill Endorsi and Anak, but he doesn't.
Okay.
Because I think one of the other characters, whose name I also can't remember, who's another fighter, he's like the most unlikely fighter to ever make it through anything.
Okay.
But somehow he like keeps surviving. He comes and like saves them, and he's like, wow, I saved the princesses of Jihad. And like all this time he's been trying to get their attention, and they are just like completely ignoring him.
Oh.
Like they do not care for this boy at all. He is kind of annoying. He also thinks he's the main character, but in a good way. But he saves them. But anyway, the reason the bull had been let out is from a super secret administrator who's actually been overtaken by a demon, but who we think was actually sent here by the king Jihad. Luckily, not Endorsi, Yuri, the princess from the beginning, she had come down looking for her sword because she wants it, and she found this like interloper into the test, and she kind of does away with him. But now she knows there's something fishy going up with the tower, and she's going to try and help. I think this is something in the next season that will come out, but she's going to try and help them like get to the top of the tower. Anyway, so things are happening with the seals and the orcs, and like it's all going mostly to plan. Bam and Rachel are sitting in their bubble, and it's like really beautiful under the sea. Like there's these sparkly starfish, and it looks really nice. And Bam's like, wow, did you ever think that we'd be here like this? And Rachel's just like, no, I didn't. Because obviously she didn't. She wanted to not be with Bam.
Right.
And like Bam's just like completely oblivious that Rachel like hates him.
Oh.
And then we have a flashback suddenly to how Rachel got into the tower.
Okay.
So she also had to talk to the guardian of the tower first. And she says, please, I'll do anything to climb the tower. And he says, anything? And then like time freezes, and Bam comes into the chamber. This from back in the beginning, essentially. And the guardian says to Rachel, would you even kill him? And she says, I will.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
Rachel, she this whole time has been plotting to kill Bam.
Oh my goodness.
And how she does it is while he's like off gazing into the stars of the sea and like commenting on how wonderful it is to be there with her, and how he's gonna take her up to the top of the tower even if she can't move her legs. Well, she's been somewhat of a liar this whole time. She can totally stand up on her own. And so she does, and pushes him out of the bubble.
Oh no.
And into the ocean. And just then the bubble is like slurped up into the anemone, and she gets spouted out, and she survives. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, what happened? Where's Bam? And she's like, I don't know what happened. And then Bam is sent back to the beginning.
No.
And he meets with the guardian again, and that's how the season ends.
Oh my god. No.
Yes. Actually, not quite how the season ends. Basically, everyone who passed the test, they like, all right, well, we all got to climb the tower now. We have to do it for Bam. We must.
Yeah.
Bam had expressed to everybody that, you know, he was going to climb the tower with Rachel regardless. And so they're all like, okay, Rachel, we're going to take you to the top because our good friend Bam wanted us to.
No.
And so at the end, everyone's like, yeah, saying, yes, we're going to do this as a team, even though they've now found out that Rachel's an irregular as well. And their administrator warns them, like, associating with an irregular can spell doom for you all.
Right.
But they're like all on board. They're like, no, we're going to do it. And it's actually really funny because Kun and Rock, they had this whole thing planned of like, you know what, since he's an irregular, I could never, I can't believe we associated with him for so long. And their plan was to kind of like reverse psychology everyone else to be like, no, he's our friend, you know, Bam.
Right.
But everyone was already like, yeah, we're
already
on board. You
with
don't
it.
need to do this awful acting. So basically they all have this resolution, like, we're going to take Rachel to the top.
Oh, she doesn't
in
deserve
honor
it,
of
though.
Bam. She doesn't deserve it. And it's awful. And Kuhn is like, you better be thankful for doing this for you, because Bam is a way better person than you are, and he deserves to be here, not you.
Yeah.
And hopefully in the next season, Bam comes back and finds them all again.
And tells them what happened.
So
Bam needs to learn the power of self-respect.
Bam doesn't know. He needs more life experience.
He does need more life experience.
Oh, poor Bam. So that was unfortunately broad strokes of this absolutely wonderful story that I royally messed up. I'm so sorry. It's really good though.
It sounds good.
It's very moving.
I'm game for it.
If you have time, I'd encourage it to be watched.
For sure.
So, do you want my quote once again?
I would love it. I have no idea what it's from, but I love it.
Okay, here we go. Memories of a life I leave behind. Take a souvenir to remind me of the ones that love. Feel my heart, it beats like a stopwatch. Running out of time with each tick-tock. It's never or now.
I got nothing.
It is the lyrics to the song Take Me by DJ Tiesto.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I think it came out in like 2013 or something.
All right.
And it's like one of those electronic, like house beat drop kind of songs.
Like dubstep?
No, yes, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Understood.
Again, I didn't know it prior to this looking up of lyrics.
Deal. All
So
right.
if everyone wants to go Google this and have a sudden 7-view increase on the music video, because that's our listenership, then I'm sure DJ Tiesto would be very happy.
Are such an influence. Oh, okay. I love it.
Maybe we should tweet at DJ Tiesto.
DJ Tiesto, we mentioned you in our podcast. Promote us and we'll promote you.
I don't think he needs us.
I know, not at all. Generator, get me out of this. Tell me what our word is next time.
The next word is pumpkin.
Pumpkin. How cute.
How adorable. How Halloween themed.
Yeah. In early, what'll that come out? June?
June, yeah.
May. It'll
End
be
of May, yeah.
It's like halfway to Halloween.
Yeah. I only plan my life around how close we are to Halloween anyway, so it's all good.
Cool. All right. So,
Thanks.
what do we say?
Thanks for listening to the podcast. And if you enjoyed us even a little bit, tell a friend about us. Share us with your friends on some form of social media and be like, hey, check out these two idiots. They're kind of funny. Because we...
Or you could be nice.
I mean, making fun of us is also appropriate. But you can
Check out these two lovely individuals.
These
who
two
are very
lovely
humorous.
nerds who are funny and charming and witty, and we like listening to them.
And they totally have all of it together when it comes to giving recaps.
We have never claimed to have it together. We just claimed we were going to talk about it. So
True.
share with a friend so that we can grow this podcast, because it's fun and it'd be cool to have more people interacting with our media. I think that's it. So thanks again for listening. Thanks, Generator, for our word for next time and this time and all the times. And as always, I've been Stephanie.
And I've been Allison.
And remember, this continues to not be a pyramid scheme.
I don't know how you could mistake it for one at this point.
Bye.
Bye.